In this demo, I'm going to show you how to write a little code to handle a checked exception. And to do that, we're going to create a little program to read from a file. So what I've done here is in my week 10 folder, I put a file named data.txt, and it's just directly in the project folder. Now I'm going to open that, so double click on it, and it's a simple file. This is the first line, this is the second line. So basically I've got this file, it's in the project directory, and I'm going to write a little program to read from it. So let's do that. And the file IO parts of this I'm going to focus on more next week, but I wanted to give you a real example of what's to come and show you how to put this together. But our primary focus right now is I'm going to be focused on the checked exception handling aspects that we've got to do. Okay, so I'm going to use this class called file, and we'll actually be going through this class more next week. So basically there exists this class file. It's in the Java IO package, and basically this is meta information about the file. And so it doesn't create a file, or we're not using it to create a file, we're going to use it to look at a file. Now notice I intentionally made a mistake here. Dat.txt. The name is data.txt. So basically to file, I pass a string, which is the name of the file. But I'm making a mistake initially, and so we'll see. That'll generate the exception later, and we'll see how to handle it. Okay? And so then I'm going to use scanner, which we're very familiar with. But instead of a string or system in, I'm going to say file. And so basically we're going to use scanner to read from this file, and scanner is in Java util, and so I've got to import it. So now I've got this other error message, unhandled exception. This is an example of a checked exception and why we need to know exceptions handling in order to do file IO. And so with the other scanner methods from a string and system in, we did not have to do anything special. But right now, this is the compiler saying, hey, this scanner constructor may throw file not found exception. File not found exception is one of the exceptions in the category checked exception. And so basically, our code must handle this. And it's given us two choices, the throws declaration or the try catch block. Let's just try the throws declaration. Okay? And so here it is, the throws clause, and it added that, Java IO. So the throws clause means we're handling an exception by declaring the method that our method that we're writing main may throw this exception. Okay? And so that's one way of handling it, is just delegate to whoever called main, whoever called the method I'm writing, hey, you handle it, my method may throw it. So scanner throws it, my method main has got to handle it, and the way I'm handling it is saying I may throw it. Okay, so let's save this and then run it, and there we go. And so read file line 8 called init, another way of calling a constructor, and saying line 8, basically the file not found exception was thrown. So in my code, line 8 is where the exception was thrown, and we threw it. So who called main? Well, recall it's the Java virtual machine that called main. So who's receiving the instance of exception that we're throwing? It's the Java virtual machine. What does the Java virtual machine choose to do with the exception? It prints it out. It calls print stack trace. Okay, so that's one way of handling a checked exception. Let's delete the throws clause. And then in this case, what we're going to do is choose the other option, surround with try catch. Okay, so we can write this code ourselves, and let's just use the one that Eclipse suggests for us. And then we'll save this. Let's clear out the message so we know it's it's clear. And then let's run this again. Okay, and we get error message again. Okay, except it's line 9 now. So line 9 has the exception, and then it was thrown, and so we're printing out the stack trace on line 11. Since this is a checked exception, maybe we ought to put a different message there. So we're going to say system out print line file not found. Okay, we'll just print that message out. And so now when we run our program, that's the message that gets printed out. Okay, and so let's put a message in here. End of main. So when we run this, that doesn't exist. It's data.txt. We intentionally misspelled it so that when we try to open it with the scanner, so the file class isn't opening it. The scanner class is actually trying to open that file. It cannot find it. And so it can't provide us an instance of scanner to read from it because the file doesn't exist. So it throws file not found exception. We caught it. The catch says we've handled it appropriately. Whatever we do, and in this case, we're just printing out a message. But since it was caught, there is no live exception, and exception handling continues as normal. Okay, so let's try to read a line from that. Let's write some other code. So string line is input.next line. So read a line and then print out that line. Okay, when let's just step through this so we understand the exception handling mechanism here. And so when we run this, switch perspective, and then so I'm trying to run this, and notice this through the exception, file not found exception, we skipped reading it because we have no instance to read it. The file doesn't exist. The file name dat.txt doesn't exist. So we skip this. We go to the exception handler. That's assumed to handle it correctly. And then we continue normally. Okay? Our file was never read, but we continue normally. And so that's an example of a handler. Let's actually show, so this is handling a caught exception, handling a checked exception with a try catch block. We caught the exception and handled it. And we also saw throws. But let's actually see this program work correctly. Okay, so let's fix the name of our program. And now save it and run it and watch what happens. So we'll just step through here and note what happens is we did not throw the exception. So we're not doing the handler. We're continuing normal in line. This is the first line of the file. And you may recall that if we look at our file, yep, that's the first line. So we actually use scanner to read from the file. We're printing it out normally. And then do we do the handler as well? And the answer is no. Okay. So normal processing is no exception was thrown. We don't do the handler. We continue normally. Okay.